Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the General Show. So, we are back with another episode. This is a very interesting one because it talks about businesses, and yeah, it's a very interesting one. So, recently, Michael Jordan has decided to sell his basketball team. He was a majority shareholder of the Charlotte Hornets for those that watch basketball. So we'll be breaking that down, and you'll tell me what you think about it. So the reason I'm reviewing this is for us to be cognizant of certain transitions sports people have to go through. For instance, being a player and then being an owner, or being a player and then being a coach. Those are two different sides of a coin. Being great at one thing doesn't automatically make you great at the other. But equally so, if you really put in the work, or you are of a different breed, you actually end up being good at both, you see. So this is literally one of the prime examples of it, and I hope you enjoy and interact with this. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, Michael Jordan bought the Charlotte Hornets for they say pennies on the dollar back in 2010. And on the team's recent $3 billion sale, he has now made money on the Hornets for at least well over $2 billion. Then he has done 40 years with his Nike deal, which is $1.8 billion. But can't really compare pears and peaches. But yeah, I guess that's it. So let's get into the side of it. So this is about the history of the Charlotte Hornets, right? So in 2003, Robert Johnson was one of top people in the world, right? He had just sold BT Network for $3 billion and was the first black billionaire in American history. So BT is like an entertainment channel. They do music, art, essentially anything in entertainment, and they were documenting black people's happenings. They still do even now, to whoever the owner is, but yeah, he was one of the first guys to do it. And then he had just sold the BT network for $3 billion, and that was first black billionaire in American history. So Johnson paid $300 million to expand and bring in the Charlotte Hornets into the NBA. So NBA is literally arguably the best basketball team in the league in the world, you see. So he had to spend that much, and then laid out a master plan, including he had a regional sports network with the team's television broadcasting rights, but that didn't work. I must commend Robert Johnson, because clearly he doesn't stay in one place. So if he's moving from the entertainment side, and then he's thought that expanding into sports, because sports is such an integral part of human society. So him having done that was actually a very good move. And with business, there are wins and there are losses, but then it seemed that him trying to open a regional sports network didn't quite work out. I think it was a bit too early for the time, because you may have a great plan. The best thing in life is you hoping that it works out at that time. But yeah, as his regional sports channel failed, after just one season, and then when the team was losing $25 million annually, Johnson fired more than 40 employees to cut costs. I'm not sure as to how much it costs to run a basketball team, but then for him to fire such a large amount of people, they must have been bleeding serious amounts of money. Besides the 25 million, I think even the integrity of the team itself, maybe the team morale wasn't there at most, and yeah, it could have been a lot of factors, but that's what was happening then. But Johnson kept downplaying what was happening in Charlotte, telling fans that winning would solve everything. I'm not necessarily sure what he was thinking. I think him coming from an entertainment side, he thought that um, things could be at face value. So with sports, one thing I know is that it's more of a camaraderie more than what people see. There needs to be a sense of belonging, sense of unity, a sense of identity. It's not just, okay, I buy this and then everyone now supports it. It needs to have a holistic approach to things, and maybe his approach wasn't the best of the best, you see. So then he was able to convince Michael Jordan to buy a minority into the team in exchange for complete control of all the basketball decisions. It made sense to Johnson because that was an NBA legend. He thought that because he was a player, he'd understand the culture end. But I think in Michael Jordan's case, it's a different dynamic because he was literally fixated on basketball only, not the business side of basketball, you see. And I don't think by then there were a lot of financial advisors for him to help him out then, you see. So could have been a mess. It sounded like a great idea at the time, and MJ was the greatest basketball player, as I mentioned before. His knowledge alone could build a winning team. I don't necessarily agree with this because there's so many great players that were great players, but then they couldn't replicate that into other players' mindsets and psyches and team building because it was more of an individualistic journey. And as people, our understanding, commitment, and drive isn't the same. So, in as much as let's say I'm the fastest man ever, I can't input that into the next person. Maybe they don't have the same drive as me, the same talent, and. It's a 50-50, you see. So the Charlotte Hornets spent hundreds of millions of dollars on free agents. They fired and hired coaches, and they drafted several players into the top 10, including Adam Morrison, Brandon Wright, and DJ Austin. All three respectively number 3, 8, and 9. Okay, but the Charlotte still didn't make the playoffs a single time and have a winning record from 2005 to 2009. Again, as I said, just because I was a sporting great doesn't mean that I'll be an excellent business person. Even though I made money from business, doesn't mean that I can do it at such a macro scale. Because remember, I can make an excellent business deal by myself, but that doesn't mean that I can now manage a hedge fund for like 50 companies or so. Those are different dynamics. And I think that's where they got it wrong. And unfortunately, they took a lot of L's because, as I mentioned before, it's more than just taking the best of the best. It's a sport. It needs camaraderie from all angles and approaches. It's not one-sided, you see. So, yeah, that was the happenings there. And then, to make matters worse, Charlotte's attendance dropped under Michael Jordan. As I said, just because you're Michael Jordan, I don't think, from what I've watched and from everything else, he's not necessarily the most charismatic in terms of garnering people's support and so forth. Yes, his talent undeniable, but then if teammates talk about his selfishness, ego, and his destructiveness, I don't think that would translate into a boss. Because as I mentioned, it's a team effort, having a team. It's not just something that you can emulate out of nowhere. And then, so Charlotte Hornets actually had horrible attendance according to these figures. 2006, 637,520. 2007, that dropped by 34,000, and then 2008 it dropped again by 8,000. So yeah, it wasn't good. And then Robert Johnson was also investing in many other businesses, so I think he was just trying to diversify all the money that he'd made from the BT sale, which somewhat makes sense because he was buying car dealerships, private equity funds, production studios, and even a business that installs slot machines in airports throughout the Caribbean. Yeah, he was really trying to diversify his money. In terms of business, once again, there's no one size fits all, but I think over diversification too quickly is also another problem. As I've said before in many of my episodes, wealth is actually a slow pressure cooker. It takes time. There are a lot of things that you need to get right and a lot of things that you get wrong. So I think Mr. Robertson here, Mr. Johnson here, had made a serious blunder with the over diversification. But I understand it had to happen that way for him to learn the tools of the trade, and one couldn't necessarily fault him because remember, look at the times, it's not like now. And then, unfortunately, he had a costly divorce. I think this is Michael Jordan. And then, with his NBA team still downing in debt, Johnson needed cash and decided to put the team up for sale. His initial ask price was 350 million. Okay, so it was a 50 million profit for him from the initial, but then with several $1 million in the upcoming interest payments, Johnson was close to becoming illiquid and quickly sold the team to Michael Jordan. Unfortunately, for a loss of 25 million, which was $275 million. So Johnson was going through a divorce. Presume he didn't have a prenup, hence they are saying the costly divorce, and he was over diversifying on the other side. So yeah, he must have been going through a very hectic period in his life. Yeah, it happens to the best of us. But hey, man, his midlife crisis was a lot of crunching millions at that time, which I think this is, if you use this current market's inflation rate, this is literally $1 billion, which he was playing around with just the Charlotte Hornets. But then yeah, Michael Jordan bought it for 275 million. He had the money, and around this period there was a lot of Michael Jordan sales. He was getting movies, documentaries, things were flowing. And this was just before the market crash. So him having this money, the economy crashing also benefited him somewhat. So he got it from Mr. Johnson. I'm talking about Michael Jordan. And then, yeah, he got it somewhat cheap for 275, as I mentioned, because the 25 million, it had to be lost because Mr. Johnson was going through financial turmoil, which is pretty devastating, I can imagine. And then they're saying that's only half of the story, because the Daily Beast later reported that MJ actually only put out $25 million in cash, and then a large portion of it was valuation on existing debt on the business. So in simple terms, MJ paid just 25 million out of the pocket for the team. That's a very good bargain. But yeah, the nitty-gritties of debt. But fast forward a decade, and Michael Jordan's ownership tenure is also ending. MJ certainly didn't win much with the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, so now they're crunching down the specifics of the sale. So from 275, we actually find out that Michael Jordan actually just took out 25 million. That's very interesting. And then the other was in valuation and the existing debt of the business. So you see, with this existing debt valuation thing, you need to be able to suss out what's happening, because sometimes you think you're buying a company or business cheap, but then they have a lot of debt, and then that debt can actually sink you because you end up refinancing, changing the terms of the repayments, and it's literally almost a never-ending pitfall. So you need to be mindful of this. It's very interesting for Michael Jordan to have taken out the 25 million at the time. It means that they must have trusted each other, and Michael Jordan must have trusted his brand. I'm still saying his business brand, whoever's advising him, they don't always look out for the best of him, because when he talks, person, oh man, shoots himself in the foot. But yeah, it's a story for another day. So with the team, number one, he'd never won much, right? He never won a playoff series. He never finished higher than 6th in the East. 5th was winning percentage in the NBA. But with the media rights drastically increasing, MJ still won big time as an owner, as an NBA owner, because He's selling the team for $3 billion valuation. From having bought it from um, $25 million or 275 including valuation and debt to $3 billion, that is a major win. Kudos to him and his advisors. And then they see, for context, that's double the 1.5 million valuation he received when selling 20% of the team in 2020. So he did try and diversify himself also. He tried to expand the business partners in 2020, hoping that the Hornets would perform better, but no, it wasn't working. So it means in total it's actually made more than $3 billion, because isn't it the 20% of the 2020 portion sale is 1.5 billion, and then now the estimated 2 billion profit. So it's quite a lot. That's 70% higher than the 1.7 valuation Forbes gave franchise just 9 months ago. Okay, that's interesting. So even the evaluators even got a higher purchase valuation. So no, that's good. Now this is good money moves, and I wonder what he did to increase the valuation of the company by over 70%. Maybe he has that good PR team, which is good, and I think also his documentary helped him a lot. And then the last aspect is it represents an 11 times revenue multiple, which is much bigger than what the average NFL 7 times, NBA 8.4 times, or even MLS 10 times teams would typically trade for. And it's the 7th most expensive sports sale in history. Okay, so that's very interesting. His brand ultimately is working for him, but as a business owner. But then in terms of the team and culture and fans, they're taking a major loss because they're dwindling. They don't have a good record. It's like they're just there for the participations medal, and then it ends there. So the point is quite simple. Many people talk about how Michael Jordan failed as an NBA owner, but a $3 billion sale means that he will personally make more than $2 billion on deals after taxes and litigation. And to be fair, that is a very huge win. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for staying and watching this episode. I hope you like, comment, share, and subscribe. This was an attempt of me discussing different business portfolios because genuinely I'm interested in how we maneuver around money in different contexts for us as people, so that we can learn where we can, we apply, where we need to learn lessons, we learn. But ultimately, man, we're here for a good time and not a long time. Well done to Michael Jordan for making all of those billions. Hopefully the person who buys the Charlotte Hornets will be able to quantify it properly. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.